Welcome, everyone. So thank you very much for joining today the session, A Soil Deal for Europe, our mission for healthy soils. My name is Kerstin Rosenow. I'm the head of Unit Research and Innovation at the European Commission's Director General for Agriculture and Rural Development. I'm currently also the mission manager for the mission Soil Deal for Europe, and it's my great pleasure to be your guide through today's session. So as the Soil Mission was officially launched about a year ago, and I mean, we're working on it since more than 3 years now, but I think it's a good time to take stock, to step back and to see a little bit what have we achieved, what we need to achieve. So for the restoration and protection of our soils in Europe and beyond, agricultural, forest and urban soils, and our land in more general terms. In this session, we will shortly present the mission A Soil Deal for Europe and the state of play with regards to its implementation. We will then hear from very distinguished guests about relevant existing related initiatives to soil health and why is it so urgent that we act together now on our soils. So with much further ado, I would like to present our speakers of today. So we have, first of all, Mr. Martin Kovac, who is State Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development of the Slovak Republic. And Martin is a soil mate, we know that. Martin Kovac graduated in the field of land and water resources management, and prior to his governmental career, he served in the public service on a mission to protect cultural and natural heritage in Slovakia, and his following appointments have been related to local government and integrated management of floods and landscapes. So really, he's an expert both politically and also scientifically on soils. Then we have Mrs. Manuel Arripa. So she is a member of the European Parliament and part of the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy. So she knows intimately about this new endeavor of the missions, and she was also one of the great supporters of the European Parliament resolution on soil production adopted in April 2021. Then we have Dr. Urania Jimeno Garcia. So she's a specialist as a scientist and the head of the Department of Environmental Quality and Soils in the Desertification Research Center, the CIDE, at the University of Valencia in Spain. And she has more than 25 years of experience in soil science, studying the main degradation processes mainly in the Mediterranean. And she has participated in many research projects at EU, national and regional level. So lots of expertise there as well. And last but not least, we have Dr. Thomas Perham, who is a soil expert at the Office of the Tyrolean Provincial Government and works in the soil working group of the Alpine Convention. The Alpine Convention is the first international treaty signed as early as 1991, aimed at sustainable development and protection, and this includes the protection of soils of an entire mountain range, the Alps. So I think we have really a very interesting panel here, and I look very much forward to be discussing with you today. So first of all, it's always good to visualize the context in which we work. So we want to show you a little, very short video, what all of this is about. So please enjoy the video. Thanks. Okay. We just saw, we understand why emission on soil is more than important. So healthy soils really are the basis for nutritious and safe food and support other vital interconnected ecosystem services. So you've seen from carbon storage to environment to biodiversity, all is there. Yet soil degradation is challenging for our lands. In the EU today, 60 to 70% of soils are considered to be really unhealthy. So contamination and waste management are biggest unknowns, for example, in agricultural lands, often contaminated by pesticides, metals, sewage sludge, and so on. There are also local hotspots, such as ex-industrial districts or landfills, which are left contaminated without the possibility to use the land for other uses unless restored. So soil-related knowledge, monitoring and policies focus to a large extent on agricultural soils. Nevertheless, we need much more knowledge and data to address soil health in other land uses, as well as in forest exploitations, urban areas, mountain areas, or industrial sites. Moreover, even where existing, the knowledge regarding sustainable soil management is not sufficiently applied in practice. We need to focus on innovative pathways and access and disseminate this knowledge. There's a real practice gap, application of this knowledge. So soil health is the prerequisite to meet targets of a large range of global commitments and European initiatives. The soil mission, in fact, will support the EU's ambition to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, but also the Green Deal goals. So on sustainable farming, climate resilience, biodiversity, and zero pollution. The mission will contribute to revitalize rural areas and will also is a flagship initiative even of the EU long-term vision for rural areas. And in parallel, synergies with other programs and policies have been developed. It's important the mission starts in RNI, but we want to go much beyond. So we have, in fact, direct links, of course, into the Common Agricultural Policy and its European Innovation Partnership on Agricultural Sustainability. And the mission is also an integral part where we work together with our environmental colleagues on the new soil strategy, the soil law, the European Soil Observatory, and many more programs. So the important thing is really to pull everything under one roof and make all these sources act together. To address all these issues, the mission A Soil Deal for Europe will support the transition towards healthy soils by 2030 by putting in place an effective network of 100 living labs and lighthouses in rural and urban areas. So the mission has 8 specific objectives where we will see how well we do, how we can measure with also indicators. And these range from reducing desertification, conserving soil organic carbon stocks, to as far as improving soil literacy. The mission has 4 building blocks. So besides the living labs and the lighthouses, so the real-life testing sites, putting it into practice in the field and in the forest and in the urban communes, it is implemented through an ambitious research and innovation program, and harmonized framework for soil monitoring in Europe, and importantly, communication, citizens' engagement, and soil literacy, aimed at really increasing everybody's participation. The mission was officially launched in September 21. And the first work programs have been published. And we have seen that we are now engaging into phases of capacity building and really getting to there, building the capacity to implement our lighthouses and our living labs. And the second work program has very much focused on projects on the role of soil biodiversity, strategies for land decontamination and reuse, better preservation and increase of soil carbon, and enhanced soil-relevant education. And the upcoming work program in 23 will launch the first wave of living labs. So I think there's quite a lot of things that have been done already, but I'm sure there is much more to do. So I'm now going to our speakers, whom I'm sure have to tell us much more what we still have to do and how we can improve our capacity to protect and restore our lands. So first of all, I would now invite State Secretary Mr. Martin Kovac. So we have witnessed an exceptionally dry summer, and I'm afraid it's not the last one we have ahead, with drought problems everywhere in Europe. We all know that prolonged droughts increase the risk of soil desertification, while if soils are healthy, they can reduce the risk of both floods and droughts. So what is the status of soils in Slovakia? What are the main challenges you face there, and how are you addressing them? Please tell us, Martin. The floor is yours for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Kerstin. Hello, Europe. As a State Secretary, I am acutely aware of challenges concerning climate change in respect to our agricultural sector. Slovakia faces drought as well as other countries in Europe. There is a direct link between the rise of flood and drought risks and the land use changes, soil and water management. Key indicator of the problem or solution is water retention capacity of soil and landscape structures. Content of organic material in the soil and proportion of vegetation cover of the landscapes belongs to key indicators that need to be exactly monitored and assessed. To manage these risks of drought and floods, we have to manage soil and rainwater in a better way. We formulated principles of integrated management of water and land resources. We exercised these principles in Slovakia on all 3 levels, local, regional and national. We see a key role of good rainwater management on all types of the land, on agricultural land, in urban areas, but in forest as well. The best integration of public policies towards risks reduction is local level, where we can assess the state of soil and land use of soil in the cadastral area. Once we measure, calculate and monitor actual rainwater retention capacity of soil and landscape structures, we can manage available rainwater in a better way and better understand how we lose or increase water retention capacity on annual basis. On the basis of this assessment, we can propose relevant and effective adaptation and management measures, not only for agricultural or forest land, but for urban areas as well. By implementation of these measures, we are improving the preparedness of soil and landscape structures to absorb rainwater in case of every rain event during the year. This contributes to underground water recharge, supports evapotranspiration, and cooling the landscape. More evapotranspiration supports more rain in the landscapes and river basins. Slovakia has experience with implementing large-scale restoration program in many regions and communities to increase water retention capacity of soil and landscape structures. For creating complex national framework to implement the action, we formulated new component of state policy that will be focused on assessment, funding, and securing ecosystem services of soil and landscape structures. Within this new policy, we understand that soil is a natural carbon and water storage of the landscapes. We started legislation process to set up 3 new tools. First, the complex national information and monitoring system for soil, certification system, carbon and water bank, and the third tool will be foundation of climate fund for soil that will help fund climate action on soil. It will be the robust mechanism that will support the needed climate and soil action on local, regional and national level. Last but not least, it is important to mention that proposed policy supports active engagement of land users, landowners and local communities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Martin. That was very clear, and thanks for respecting the time. That was absolutely great, and we can see a lot is going on in Slovakia already. That's a bit of a front runner there. And then I would now switch to MEP Manuel Arripa. So in April 21, the European Parliament adopted its resolution on soil protection, calling for an EU-wide legislative framework on soil. You were amongst the members of the European Parliament who initiated this resolution. So why do you think it's necessary to have an EU legislative framework for the protection of soil? And do you think that this time we will have a more supportive environment? Because we have tried once before, but we failed. So thanks. The floor is yours for 3 minutes, Manuela.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me at today's conference and to this important session on healthy soil and soil protection. Today, soil in Europe is indeed facing various threats. We saw it in the film, in the video, and we heard about it. As healthy soils are so important, let me just reiterate the key facts. Healthy soils are the basis for the functioning of our ecosystems, our food, a stable climate, and healthy soils are an important CO2 reservoir. We heard it, 60 to 70% of our soils in the EU are in poor conditions. And until now, we have European laws to protect water and air, but we still not have a common legislative act on soil protection. So the question comes up, isn't healthy soil just as important for our survival as water and air? Europeans deserve strong soil protection legislation at EU level as soon as possible. Moreover, and especially as the protection of soil biodiversity is absent from most environmental protection legislations and is absent in the main EU Common Agricultural Policy legislation. A Commission attempt from 2006, so 16 years ago, you mentioned it, to propose a framework for soil was supported by the European Parliament, but blocked in Council by a minority of member states, above all by Germany and France, for over 8 years. And that despite the fact that the absence of suitable EU soil legislation has been identified by the European Environment Agency as a key gap that contributes to the continuous degradation of many sites within the Union, reduces the effectiveness of the existing incentives and measures, and limits Europe's ability to achieve its environmental sustainable development goals and climate objectives. So sustainable development in Europe and especially globally is not possible if land soil resources are not properly addressed. Moreover, and this is very important, the EEA stated clearly that we need a strong soil protection and that it can only be achieved at EU level. And this is definitely not enough to leave it to member states. So as a shadow rapporteur of the Green Group on the resolution on soil protection, you mentioned it, I was constantly calling on the Commission together with my colleagues, the other shadow rapporteurs, to prioritize the importance of soil and to come up with a legislative procedure. There was a big opposition in the Parliament, but in the end, we managed to have a Parliament resolution with a clear call to have a European binding soil protection legislation. And I'm very happy that the Commission followed our call and will come up with an own legislation. And my appeal here to the Commission is, as we have no more time to lose, we must adopt EU legislation before the end of this legislative term. Therefore, please come up with a legislative proposal as soon as possible, latest beginning of 2023. And now to come to your second question, what makes me more confident that this time a legislation could succeed is, well, first of all, we have a big member state which for years blocked an EU soil protection law in the Council, but no longer wants to do so. Germany has written into its coalition agreement that it wants to push for binding regulations at EU level. One can only hope that other countries like France, Austria, and the Netherlands will do the same. And I also count on Slovakia here. And especially as we are in a climate emergency, in accordance to science, drought and floods will become the rule in the next years in Europe. We need to act, and not acting is not an option anymore. And member states have to acknowledge this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lots of support here for a legislative framework, the last public good that we have to protect with EU public legislation. Thanks a lot, Manuela. So now I go to our third speaker. So Dr. Urania Jimeno Garcia. So you have more than 25 years of experience studying the main degradation processes in the Mediterranean areas, Urania. Can you please explain to us why desertification is a major threat in Europe, not just in the south, and give us an example what we can do to limit desertification and restore already degraded lands? So the floor is yours for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. That's a big question. I'll try to answer them in a few minutes. Let me start with a data. In Southern, Central, and Eastern European countries, the 25% of the lands present high or very high risk of desertification. That means that these territories are highly vulnerable and more prone to suffer the consequences of the desertification processes. Desertification will become more severe as population, economies, and consumption growth, aggravated by climate change. Drought, shortage of fresh water, both in terms of quantity and quality, and land degradation as consequence of the climate variation and the human unsustainable activities adversely affect our health and threaten the expansion of food production required to feed a rising population. As a consequence of these perturbations, we have increasing soil degradation processes like erosion, pollution, loss of carbon, salinization, etc. Also, long-term loss of natural vegetation, loss in water quality, and also in the land's natural resilience. These facts have major impacts on the economy and welfare of population and may result in loss of livelihoods, forcing in some cases affected people to migrate. And here you have other data. The economic cost associated with soil degradation in the European Union exceeds 50 billion euros per year. Thus, if we want to achieve land degradation neutrality target addressed in the Agenda 2030, it's necessary to carry out actions based on a sustainable use of the non-degraded lands and at the same time restore the degraded ones. This leads me to answer the second part of your question. What can we do to limit desertification and restore the affected lands? Well, we can think in desertification like a chair with 4 legs: soil, water, vegetation, and human activities. Thus, acting on each of these legs, we can limit desertification and implement measures to restore the affected land. This requires long-term integrated strategies based on sustainable land management of our natural resources. Different actions can be applied at different scales, from local farm scale, watershed, landscape, etc., and they can be different for the different sectors of the economy, mainly forestry, agricultural, and water management sectors. In any case, these actions should preferably follow the sequence: avoid, reduce, and reverse, because actions to prevent and mitigate desertification are more effective and less costly than reversing the past degradation. Regarding preventive actions, I'm going to mention only a few of them because there is a long list. But for example, it's crucial to promote sustainable practices and implement new technologies to obtain a greater efficiency in the use of the resources. Other measures could be use preventive silviculture oriented to the carbon sequestration, and other could be use plant and animal species adapted to the changing climate conditions, and of course, increase people awareness of desertification and its consequences. There is a long list of actions that fit within the different European environmental strategies, including those specific to soils. And the soil missions give the opportunity to advance in research, develop and apply new technologies aimed at improving soil health and prevent and restore land degradation under a changing climate. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So I think that was very clear, a long list of things that are partially done, but I think that we need to do better and in a more cohesive way. So I think that illustrates very well. So now I want to go to the last speaker of our first round, then preparing for the second one, so to Dr. Thomas Perham. So you are part, as I already mentioned, of the Soil Protection Working Group of the Alpine Convention. We also tackle mountain soils in the soil mission. So what is the status of soils in mountain areas? What are the main threats and what is the Alpine Convention doing for soils? So thanks a lot. Also for you, 3 minutes, Thomas.
Thank you for the invitation to be part of this session and to speak about alpine soils and the work at the Working Group Soil Protection at Alpine Convention. So my answer consists of 4 main points. The first is alpine soils have special characteristics. First, they are very young. So they started development after the last ice age, but also just right now, where glaciers melt and open the floor for new soil development. They are very heterogeneous due to the topography and the very diverse precipitation regimes we find over the Alpine Arch. And they are also in a very fast development and change due to permafrost thawing and changing snowfall patterns due to the climate change. Secondly, the main threats, in my opinion, are erosion and landslides, the high land use pressure, especially at the valley bottoms, and consequently the soil consumption and soil sealing. Then further the soil pollution, also the diffuse pollution like organic pollutants or microplastic, but also the local pollution like heavy metals, for example. And the loss of biodiversity also to mention. So I see that the objectives of the soil mission therefore perfectly meet the need for alpine soils. Third, the Alpine Convention, as you said, is an international treaty aimed at the sustainable development and protection of the entire mountain range. It's a legally binding framework, and at its side, there are several protocols. And the main important for the soils are the Soil Conservation Protocol and also the Protocol on Spatial Planning and Sustainable Development. So these two protocols in concrete are until now the only legally binding international soil legislation we have in Europe. So there is the great importance for the Alpine Arch and also for whole Europe. And fourth, in concrete, what is our working group doing? So for example, in assistance of the Compliance Committee of the Alpine Convention, an in-depth report on the economical use of soils was elaborated, including specific recommendations for the Alpine area. And we went further, for example, with soil erasing events like an Alpine Soil Film Tour or Alpine Soils newsletter. We try to improve the data comparability in the Alps and also the representativity of the Alpine area for a good cooperation with local soil sampling, for example. Then some activities also focus on peatlands and the protection of organic carbon in soils. So you can see we try to span the bow, also the arching bow, from the importance and need of the Alpine soils to concrete actions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. That was very clear as well, and also some good innovative actions I see here. So thanks to all four of you, because I think we have seen from different angles how important this is, good initiatives that are going, but also what we still have to do. So I think we have now really a good view of how our need to act further on soils and the various types of actions that can be carried out at different levels, being it legislation, investments, research, implementation, or good practices. Now I'm coming to the second question, which is a question I'm going to ask to all four of you. So what do you think, and it's good to reply from your particular perspective and role, what do you think is the particular role of the mission A Soil Deal for Europe in promoting soil health, and how can it best complement your work in the different areas? So I will be again starting with Martin. The floor is yours again for 2 to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Kerstin. Mission A Soil Deal for Europe is a very important mechanism that can help us with transition from conventional farming to sustainable carbon and regenerative farming. Soil is the component and foundation of carbon neutrality that we have to achieve in sector of land use changes and forest, named as LULUCF, until 2035. We have to protect existing carbon in the soil, and we have to use the soil as the largest natural carbon sink in the planet. Soil is the largest water storage facility in the continents as well. Therefore, Mission Soil has a great opportunity to support research in the field, to formulate new standards of sustainable soil management, and to establish new instruments for renewal of ecosystem services of soil and landscape structures. There is an important linkage between already existing missions, such as Mission Cities, Mission Adaptation to Climate Change, Mission Soil, and Mission Oceans and Waters. What brings the missions together, these missions together, is a water cycle, which regularly goes through soil. Good water and soil management creates good climate reaction with an ability to reach out for guaranteed results in flood risks and drought reduction and much needed decrease of regional temperatures. This is an ideal opportunity to implement relevant research, monitoring, and assessment of land use and land use changes impact to changes of local and regional hydrology, biology, and climate. We support all specific objectives of the soil mission, where we have potential to retain and increase stock of carbon and water in soil, slow down erosion, fight against desertification, improve soil structure, and deepen the research of soil biodiversity. Implementation of actions within soil mission in 4 mentioned different areas is an important part of the whole process. We would like to draw your attention to 2 specific topics. First, continual loss of soil organic material and water retention capacity of the landscape for decades, which means that we need to slow down this process and to reverse it. And second, cumulative impact of sensible heat production not being a subject of regular evaluation. We have to start to monitor it on a wide scale. By implementation of soil adaptation and management measures and rainwater management, we are able to reduce variety of risks for sensible heat footprint and turn soil degradation to soil renewal. We have to ensure sustainable cycles of water, cycle of nutrition, and carbon cycle and energy cycle. There are a number of synergies with other policies and programs which have been developed and consolidated. In overall, we support soil mission as a key mission to manage the risks that we face today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Martin. Message well received. Also the 2 areas where we should particularly focus on. So we'll carry this further. So Manuela, the same question to you. So please, from your perspective, can you please give us your thoughts on this? Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you, Kerstin. I'm happy to do so. First of all, I have to say I'm very happy that we have this mission on soil health. It seemed that there was a risk of not getting financed. Therefore, together with the 2 colleagues of mine who were also shadow rapporteurs for the resolution on soil, we addressed the commissioners in charge to launch this mission without delay and assured them our full support. And this mission is of utmost importance in order to assure that at least 75% better all soils are healthy by 2030, but even better before that. That is important for healthy food, for us, for our nature and the climate. And in order to do so, we need to speed up the collection and the integration of data on soil status and trends. And we need to better understand how to tackle the threats to soil at EU level. The outcome of the planned network of 100 living labs and lighthouses for the mission will be paramount here to create this knowledge, test solutions, and, important, to demonstrate their value in real-life conditions. Moreover, this mission will be a major tool to enable the delivery of knowledge and innovation for soil restoration and protection. Harmonized representative soil monitoring across Europe is needed in order to develop early warnings of exceedances of critical thresholds and to guide sustainable soil management. We need compulsory measures to preserve soil functions, avoid soil damage, and restore degraded soil. Of course, and also of utmost importance, we also need climate and soil-adapted agricultural production. Here, the regular monitoring of soil biologically attributes and physiochemical properties, including the presence of agrochemicals and other contaminants, especially those of emergent concern, will be crucial. Moreover, and this is also a very important fact that was very important for me to highlight in the soil resolution, we have to tackle the problem of too much soil sealing throughout the EU. Member states should be obliged when sealing land to give preference to build on brownfield rather than using greenfield in order to prevent soil sealing. We have to end land degradation latest by 2030 and net land take also latest by 2050. In order to achieve this goal, we need, of course, we talked about it, an EU-wide legally binding framework, but also a uniform system in the EU to monitor soil quality, to mark fallow land and vacancies, and to identify risk areas. This is how we can transfer to more sustainable land use. I know that one of the objectives of the mission is soil sealing, increased reuse of urban soils, which I welcome very much, and I would like to ask that the mission puts a particular focus on that. To cut it short, I believe this mission is fundamental for supporting the European Green Deal and for filling the knowledge gap and the data and indicators gap we face. So the mission on healthy soil will help us to better tackle and better understand soil problems in the EU, and it can definitely help us to make a strong legislation on soil protection.
Thanks a lot, Manuela. That was very clear again. And I'm particularly thankful also for you to mentioning the monitoring aspect, because it's true that that is key. Because if we don't know what healthy soils are, which indicators do we use, we will really have difficulty to assess progress, and that also across the EU. So that's key, and that's also as a key message I'm taking. So next, Urania, the floor is to you again on the same question from your point of view.
Thank you for...
So another 3 minutes for you, Urania.
Thank you for this question. Some points of my own answer has been answered by the other participants, but nevertheless, I'm going to put on the table, on the floor, my point of view. I think that the vision offers a good framework for addressing soil and land management research across all land use types and sectors of economy. In promoting soil health, traditionally more research has focused on agricultural soils, but the mission is moving toward healthy soils and their related ecosystem services, also in forests, natural lands, and urban soils. And this is important for people that work in other types of soils. On the other hand, together with the Transdisciplinary Research and Innovation Program, I would like to highlight that the mission aims to raise society awareness of the relevance of soils. This is also a key point for the mission's success, in my opinion, because the real changes to soil health only are possible if citizens and stakeholders are involved. And regarding how the soil mission can complement my research work, I would like to mention that in a first place, mission will contribute to address the growing risk of desertification in Europe, giving support to local initiatives that combine the observation and scientific analysis of soil environmental problems that, due to their complexity or their nature of frontier between various research topics, cannot be addressed by any discipline in an unilateral way and need an overall approach. Secondly, the proposed set of indicators for soil health monitoring contribute to assess the complex processes of desertification within the European countries. But the challenge for us, the researchers, is to improve the set of indicators to cover the biophysical and socio-economic dimension of desertification and land degradation. Other challenges for researchers are related to the continued long-term monitoring to follow the results of the implemented actions. On the one hand, by developing a specific application based on new technologies, and on the other hand, standardizing methods to obtain reliable and robust time series. And finally, I appreciate the action proposed by the creation of living labs and lighthouses. From my research experience, I believe that the creation of communities between stakeholders and scientists at the local level is of great importance to solve problems and foster innovation. This initiative also established a strong commitment among stakeholders according to different soil types and used in real conditions adapted to the local needs in a diversity of geographical and socioeconomic contexts. Well, I think that I have already used up my time, so I'm not going to add anything more. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Urania, and it was very clear. So I think also the theme of long-term monitoring, standardization, interdisciplinary research and practice comes back here. So thanks a lot. So Thomas, over to you for a last word on this before I conclude the session. So give us your view, please. 3 minutes again.
So answering the first part of your question, in my opinion, the mission is very promising in accelerating necessary soil protection efforts. It can boost existing good initiatives and can build bridges between strategies, like the soil strategy or biodiversity strategy. Secondly, the scientific knowledge and the practitioners. So here I see really a very good supportive content. Then bringing good practices onto the ground is essential and can only happen to a wider scope with a fitting support. The direct financial support by the mission and the complementation by national activities can bring us a big step further in Europe and especially also in the Alpine area. Here, without implying that others are less important, especially the following missions objectives are very interesting to support our work in the scope of the Alpine area, like the conservation of soil organic carbon stocks and the peatlands, the soil sealing, stopping and the increase of reuse of urban soils to reduce the soil pollution and then hence restoration, but also the prevention of erosion. As I mentioned, it as one of the main threats we face in the Alpine area, but also to improve the soil structure and then hence the soil biodiversity. And also the improvement of soil literacy in society is a key aspect and key objective we can work together on. So this leads me to how this mission can best complement my work. I see in my daily work that it's significant that we try to work cross-sectoral and beyond borders. This is what we try to do in the Alpine Convention and Alpine Convention Working Group on Soil Protection. And we know that this is difficult, but nonetheless, we can only succeed in a truly sustainable development of our soils and also of our societies when we all work together hand in hand. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Thomas. Also very clear. So I want to thank really all four of you. So I think it's fair to conclude that we have a unique window of opportunity for the moment now to act on soil on all levels. All of you who have worked on soils, you know this is not Rome built in a day. It's a long process and soils are slow to act. So there's really no time to use and to use everything that we have at hand, the research, the innovation, the legislative framework, also the translation into practice with the living labs and the lighthouses where researchers will really work together with farmers, foresters, urban communities, really on the field, in the cities, on the forest, to translate the knowledge that researchers like Urania and you also, Thomas, are generating on the ground to make the difference, the kick that we really need to get to healthy soils by 2030, as Manuela rightly said, and also Martin, hopefully by 2030, but not much longer. So there's lots to do. We look forward to be doing this together with all of you. So that's a start. And then I would also like to highlight that there's another session coming up now, which goes a bit deeper into the synergies and also into the implementing tools. So this is something I look forward to and I would invite you to have a look at as well. And then thanks everybody for the great session, and it was a good experience to be here together with you. Thanks a lot and see you soon on farm, on forest, or in an urban garden, hopefully making a difference on soil together.
Thank you.
Thank you.